Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this press conference with the group of human rights experts on Nicaragua who are here to share with you the findings of their latest report. As you may know, the Human Rights Council established the group of experts on Nicaragua in 2022 to investigate all alleged human rights violations and abuses committed in Nicaragua since April of 2018. The group released or presented their latest oral update to the council this morning, and they're here to answer any questions you may have. With us in the room are the chair, Jan Michael Simon, and joining us online are fellow experts Ariela Peralta Di Stefano and Reed Brody. We'll start off with opening statements by each of the experts, starting with the chair, followed by those joining us online, and then we will open the floor to your questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Todd. Good afternoon, everybody. We would like to thank the media for its continued interest in Nicaragua, especially in these internationally eventful times. Our report published today shows how the Ortega-Murillo regime is increasingly extending its punitive reach transnationally. Legal, digital, and physical means are employed to violate systematically human rights of opponents, including via proxy punishment of family members. Their objective is crystal clear: generate a pervasive climate of fear and create a powerful chilling effect to discourage any form of opposition, irrespective of their geographical location. As a consequence, Nicaraguans in exile find themselves in an extremely vulnerable situation, and my colleagues will go into detail on specific aspects. Ladies and gentlemen, let me draw your attention to a particularly sensitive issue of all this, which at first sight is not obvious, or at least not in its full scope. This concerns international relations. The Ortega-Murillo regime, as part of its strategy, has demonstrated a cynical and calculated approach to international cooperation. They have been leveraging Interpol, anti-money laundering, and counter-financing of terrorism cooperation frameworks to persecute transnationally opponents. This includes the abuse of Interpol's red notice system and the circulation of false alerts on travel documents misusing Interpol's SLTD database. They have also been circulating misinformation to trigger AML and CFT compliance warnings within the international financial systems and leading to the freezing of closure of bank accounts of their targets. At the same time, within months, Ortega-Murillo have been withdrawing from several international and United Nations agencies and the Human Rights Council. So this dual strategy of using and abusing international mechanisms while at the same time and simultaneously withdrawing from international organizations pursues two key goals. The first and more evident one is to avoid scrutiny and accountability while continuing to perpetrate human rights violations. But the second and less evident goal here consists in a direct and aggressive challenge to the international legal order. It responds not merely to an administrative or diplomatic disagreement, but to express profound disregard for international obligations. This strategic goal perverts the principle of mutual trust in international cooperation, undermining the integrity of global security systems and human rights. It undermines the very foundation of international law enforcement cooperation, which relies on trust and adherence to human rights principles. And this particular strategy of transnational expression needs to be addressed by the international community. I now hand over to my colleague Reed to its introductory comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. Thank you all. The world was shaken in June by the murder of retired Major Roberto Samcam, a vocal critic of the government of Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo. Samcam was shot dead in his apartment in San Jose, Costa Rica. His killing underscored a chilling reality. Even beyond Nicaragua's borders, opponents of the government do not feel safe. I want to be clear, while Costa Rica's prosecutor has said that they are strongly looking at the possibility of a politically motivated attack, no evidence yet implicates the government of Nicaragua. But in a country from which hundreds of thousands have fled in recent years, the fatal attack raised urgent alarms about Nicaragua's transnational repression against Nicaraguans living abroad. It's as if an invisible hand follows exiles everywhere. This repression includes the arbitrary deprivation of nationality, uh, bans on returning to Nicaragua, the refusal to issue or renew passports for Nicaraguans, the deletion of civil records, the revocation of academic and professional titles, the confiscation of property and pensions, and as Jan has described, the misuse of Interpol and other international mechanisms. These acts are complemented by the targeting of Nicaraguans, of the relatives who remain in Nicaragua, who are subject to harassment, detention, dismissal from employment, confiscation of properties, solely by virtue of association. The cumulative effect of these measures is to deprive the victims, those denationalized, of their legal identity, their property, their income, their ability to move freely, and ultimately their recognition as persons before the law. Our report finds that these acts form part of a consistent and deliberate state policy to silence dissent, eradicate opposition voices abroad, and guarantee impunity for the crimes committed inside Nicaragua. One violation in particular stands out: Nicaragua's large-scale use of the arbitrary deprivation of nationality as a mechanism of targeted political repression against perceived opponents, which is unique in the world. Among those declared traitors to the homeland and deprived of their nationality have been the country's leading human rights defenders, journalists, lawyers, priests, indigenous and peasant activists, former Vice President Sergio Ramirez, the poet Gioconda Belli, several former presidential candidates. This practice violates the 1961 Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness, ratified by Nicaragua. And our group is calling on state parties to hold Nicaragua accountable by bringing a case against Nicaragua to the International Court of Justice. As Jan Simon mentioned, Nicaragua has withdrawn from practically every human rights and monitoring body, including the Human Rights Council. But since 1984, when Nicaragua brought its historic case to the ICJ to condemn U.S. aggression against the country, Nicaragua has brought 9 cases to the ICJ, far more than any other state. The ICJ is referred to 5 times in the Nicaraguan Constitution, and Nicaragua respects its decisions. States thus have at their disposal a means to stop this cruel practice, and we urge them to take it up. Thank you.
Thank you, my colleagues, Reed and Tan. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to address issues of concern related to enforced disappearances, death in custody, and arbitrary detention. The group continues to express serious concerns about the deterioration of the situation of human rights inside the country. The revival of enforced disappearances is one of the most alarming developments we have since the group starts its work, its mandate in 2022. Also, the group continues to raise alarm over the increase of mass arrest and prolonged incommunicado detention in Nicaragua. Authorities have refused to disclose the fate and whereabouts of dozens of detainees act which amount to enforced disappearances. The group has documented 22 cases of prolonged enforced disappearances. These cases are not isolated. They form part of a widespread and systematic attack against civilians, meeting the beginning of crimes against humanity under international law. International law does not require a minimum duration for an act of qualify as enforced disappearances. So we want to be clear that the group is applying the amount of enforced disappear under international human rights law. The November 2024 detention of 45 political opponents whose their whereabouts are hidden for 2 weeks are clear violation regardless of their short terms. We also express concern about recent death in custody, which occurred while the individual were held incommunicado. When people are detained in secret, torture, and in some cases die under state custody, a state's responsibility is incurred under international law. Arbitrary detention fuel a broader repressive strategy, as we have denounced. Since 2018, over 5,000 arbitrary detention has been recorded in Nicaragua. These arrests, often violent, warrantless, and politically motivated, target activists, religious leaders, journalists, and opposition figures, or who are considered an opposition figures. The repression has been institutionalized through coordinated effort involving police, judiciary, and legislative bodies. Furthermore, legal remedies are systematically denied. Victims are often held without official records, and families are denied access to legal remedy. Authority routinely ignore or mislead relatives and lawyers, obstructing habeas corpus petition and hiding detainees' location, further making worse the psychological and physical harm inflicted. Also, the group is it's want to raise concern about the targeting the in-country children, spouse, and parents of exiled Nicaragua is central to the transnational repression strategy that Jan were mentioning at the beginning. But we want to call attention about the most vulnerable member of the families, which are children and older people. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everyone for those opening remarks. Now we can open the floor to questions. We can start with those online. If you could please identify yourself in the media outlet that you work for. We can start with Efe. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for the briefing. I am Antonio Broto from Efe. My question is regarding your recommendation in the report. You said that member states should bring Nicaragua before the International Court of Justice. So I wonder if any member states have already expressed interest in doing that. And also, if you consider this a more appropriate channel for accountability in comparison with others like the International Criminal Court or the national jurisdictions. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. We have been discussing the option of bringing a case before the ICJ with a number of states. I think there's a general recognition that this is something that needs to be done. We've had meetings as a group with officials from a number of states. I think the question really is who should do it. Obviously, it has to be a state party to the convention. But a number of states have said this needs to be done. The question now is who should do it. Obviously, bringing a case, unlike Nicaragua, which has brought, as I said, 9 cases before the ICJ in recent years, there are only a few cases brought every year. And bringing a case obviously has diplomatic, financial ramifications. We're very hopeful that among the many states who believe that this needs to be done, there will be a state or a group of states that will do it. It's obviously only one of the paths to accountability, but we think, first of all, that because the ICJ is so respected in Nicaragua, it's part of the DNA of the Nicaraguan government, of the Sandinista government, which brought the historic case in 1984, and which brought a case last year against Germany for regarding arms transfers to Israel. So it's a body that Nicaragua respects, and we believe that a case that is brought would be very easy to prove based directly on the decrees, the Constitution itself. This is not something that requires a lot of gathering of evidence. It is clear Nicaragua, in its constitution, in its laws, has a policy of stripping the nationality of people who are considered to be enemies of the homeland. There are other avenues, obviously. Universal jurisdiction is another one. There are cases there's a case in Argentina. There are actually arrest warrants against Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo, and dozens of other Nicaraguan officials in Argentina. And we encourage states, and we encourage them in our reports, to use international jurisdictions. The International Criminal Court is also a possibility. Nicaragua, as you know, is not a state party to the International Criminal Court, but based on the jurisprudence developed in the case of Myanmar and Bangladesh, the crime that we have documented of deportation of Nicaraguans that begins in Nicaragua but ends in countries like Guatemala and elsewhere that are states parties. This is also an option for the prosecutor or for states parties to take forward.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything? Or
Well, just to add that, the international system is complementary in terms of state responsibility and individual responsibility when it comes up to systems criminality. So what we are facing here is not ordinary crimes, neither something that happens by chance, but it is systematic and based on systems criminality. So you can address this through different pathways. There's a criminal law, individual responsibility, there's responsibility under international law on states, and there is in between lots of mechanisms that are prepared to respond to this, be it sanctions individually or targeted sanctions on sectors, be it reactions, as we have addressed in our recommendations of the international financial system regarding issues that might be addressed by international multilateral bodies beyond the Human Rights Council or international courts. So there's a lot of possibilities to address this, well beyond having a case on an individual basis or bringing a state to the ICJ. And we would like to see the international community to make use of the whole portfolio at hand of the international community to address this situation that we are facing since many years now in Nicaragua, and which has not improved, but it has gone worse.
Thank you very much. Antonio has another follow-up question from FA. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It's a different question because in the report you also mentioned the progressive isolation of Nicaragua. This year, it's out of many international organizations and even the Human Rights Council. I wonder how this is affecting your work and what's the importance of having Nicaragua in the Council, even criticizing your report. Thank you.
Well, as you all know, in the Human Rights Council, there are 47 member states. Nicaragua hasn't been a member state. It has a possibility, nevertheless, as being a country addressed by resolutions of the Human Rights Council to contest. They haven't done this today. This is one consequence. So one consequence is that they do not have now a forum here in Geneva because they have withdrawn from it unilaterally. There is another forum which we will address on the 30th of October, which is the General Assembly, where we will brief the third committee on our findings and where Nicaragua will not be able to withdraw without withdrawing from the whole organization, which will not be the case. So the consequences for us are not really impactful, more impactful for Nicaragua, in fact. And let me tell you, as an additional point, that, as I addressed in my opening remarks, what is really concerning is not only that they are withdrawing from the international system, but they're actively and aggressively using and abusing the international system on the other side. Yeah, so one should keep in mind that there's a dual strategy of the international, within the international system by Nicaragua. That is really of concern for the international community and should be addressed by the international community as a whole.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions online or in the room? Nope. Okay. If not, that will bring us to the end of this press conference, unless you guys have any additional comments to make. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us here in Geneva today. Thanks.